Hello, my loves. Welcome to Soul Love, a channel where I discuss the twin flame phenomenon. I'm Mafalda, and welcome back if you've been here before. Thank you so much for your patience. This video has taken me a little longer to record since I've been dealing with some pretty intense Ascension flu symptoms. But I'm back and I feel very, very blessed and honored to bring you this next topic, which is so near and dear to my heart. We're going to dive even deeper into sacred sexuality and why it's so important on the twin flame journey. The reason why this topic is so important to me is because this is part of my very specific assignment here on earth as a monadic twin. And so I incarnated into a lineage and a context in which I survived severe sexual trauma in my childhood. It has been part of my deep, profound healing, clearing, and realignment on my general healing journey. And then, of course, with my twin as well. And so this is something that I'm very passionate about restoring. So let's start at the beginning. In order to understand sacred sexuality, why it's important, why twins are here to restore it, we need to go and understand why it was perverted in the first place. That's the nature of the planet that we live in. And I've mentioned this in previous videos. We learn through contrast. So in order to learn what love is, we need to learn what love is not. So in order to understand the relevance, the importance, and the sanctity of sexuality, especially when it comes to the twin flame journey specifically, we need to understand the reversal, the perversion of sexuality that has happened on this planet. So to give you some context, we are living in a world that has experienced a tremendous fall. So as many of you may know, our history has been rewritten. It's been distorted. And many of the myths that we thought were myths are actually reality. They are actually what happened. So Atlantis was a real civilization here on this planet, and it was precisely during Atlantean times that we experienced what today we call the fall of Atlantis. And this happened approximately 26 to 30,000 years ago. And ultimately, what that fall was about the choice of service to self. So whichever world, whichever civilization, there's always this dichotomy present. Service to self or service to all. Service to all, which is sometimes also referred to as service to others, but service to all, to the whole or to the collective, I feel is more accurate because it includes one. It's not just sacrificing for others. It's the understanding that we are part of the all, that we are interconnected. And so what happened to humanity and planet Earth is that we went into a very deep timeline of service to self. And service to self is basically the path of the ego. It's the path of separation consciousness. It's the path whereby we don't comprehend that we are all one, and therefore to harm another and therefore to abuse another is to abuse oneself. And so real power actually doesn't come from having power over others, but rather from mastering oneself, from remembering who we are and remembering, reclaiming our own divinity. So what has happened to humanity since those times is that we've been under the control of what I've called the counter forces. They're also sometimes referred to as the dark forces. And literally, these are the forces of ego. Of course, they can also be referred to as certain beings, certain races, certain entities that do inhabit this earth and that have humanity basically as a slave race. I'm not going to describe the exact races and entities because this isn't about fostering or encouraging more separation. Obviously, we are all one in essence, but in the material worlds, so from the 12th dimension down, we do incarnate. So we do, whether it's in denser or lighter worlds or bodies, we come in as individual soul streams, or at least we experience life that way. Consciousness is experiencing itself through these fractals. And so the existence of other beings, pardon me, is real within these realms. And it is when we forget the unity consciousness that we make the choices of going down that path, the path of the ego, the path of separation, the path of service to self. So this is just to give you a little bit of context. So humanity has been in a slumber. We have been used as a slave race, whereby we've forgotten our own power. We have been living within a victim-perpetrator paradigm where we have not had access to our own God source consciousness, the divine spark within us that has been basically lying dormant. And it has allowed for us to be exploited by certain groups that are here on Earth. Earth is a very diverse planet where all kinds of beings from all around the cosmos convene. Now, the ways in which that has taken place have been through the installment of programming into the human collective consciousness. And these programmings, they vary, but one of the strongest ones is the sexual misery program. The sexual misery program is one of the key programs of reversal of our true nature because it targets our life force energy. Sexual energy is creative life force energy. We are creations. We are born as creations of the divine, but we are creator beings ourselves. So that is our natural state. It's our natural state to create, to birth, to bring into form. And so if you control our creative life force energy, you basically control our output. You can siphon our energy to basically keep us in a state of numbness, a state of it's death, really. That's why people often refer to those that are completely asleep as zombies or as people running on autopilot. That's where you get people like NPCs, for example, that are literally only recycling programming and conditioning and are just very, very vulnerable to being operated by these counter forces that are siphoning human life force energy. Life force energy, creative energy, sexual energy is the most powerful energy that we have available. It's the Kundalini energy that you've heard about, the Shakti that resides at the base of the spine and that is ignited on a twin flame journey or any spiritual awakening, spontaneous as well, that happens. It is the most powerful energy because it is the energy of creation. It is the energy that gives birth to life in form. That is why all of us here on this planet were birthed from intimacy, sexual intimacy between our parents. That's the power of it. So you can imagine why, if you were seeking to control, you'd target that energy in humans, and you'd control the minds of the collective to keep us stuck in loops so that we cannot access our own creative life force energy, remember our divinity and our power, and direct and channel that energy toward harmonious, expansive, joyful, and fulfilling creations that are aligned with our true nature, which is love, which is truth. So you see how this how this all has come to be. The ways in which these programs have been running through the collective subconscious is through a few different ways. First of all, guilt and shame have been some of the most powerful tools. Guilt and shame are some of the lowest frequency emotions. And so when you are stuck in those emotions, it is quite literally impossible to grow, to expand, and to remember your divinity, to remember that you are not, in fact, a victim of life, that you are not, in fact, separate from life, but that you are an intricate part of this beautiful cosmic puzzle. And that guilt and shame was instilled, for example, through religion. So to paint and taint sex as the original sin, pleasure, the pleasure obtained through sex was considered wrong. It was ingrained in us that we were supposed to feel guilty for it, that yes, the sex was necessary to procreate, to bring life to earth, but that's it. So what that created was a split within the psyche, and separation consciousness reflects itself in the human psyche precisely in this soul fragmentation. That's why healing is so much about soul retrieval. It's about coming back to wholeness, because you bring back those exiled parts of your soul. So through this religious programming, a split was placed within our psyche, where on the one hand, we were taught that we were wrong for having a natural, pleasurable, blissful response to the sexual act, to sexual intimacy, to lovemaking, but then taught that that was the way to procreate and that our purpose was to procreate. So what that does is that keeps us stuck in unworthiness, in this shame for being ourselves, shame for feeling desire, shame for feeling pleasure, guilt for feeling the impulse to share and to make love with somebody that we feel connected to. That spiraled for a long time, as you know, and it's gone all the way into, for example, what we see nowadays, where instead of saying that it's wrong to have pleasure, what we've done is we've stripped the sexual act from its sanctity, from its sacredness, and we've made it completely banal, completely vulgar, as though it's something that can be done as superficially as changing your shirt every morning. And it's been painted as empowerment, as freedom, as liberation. But what it's actually done is it's cultivated numbness. It's cultivated a disconnection from the sacredness of our genitals, of our wombs, and it has allowed for a lot of us to carry dark energy within us. So let me give you an example. Women, especially those who carry wombs, can take in the energy of their sexual partner for up to 7 years if engaging in sexual intercourse. What happens when two beings make love, have sex, is that there is a merge that takes place. You literally take on energetically and I mean, even biologically, and this has been studied through epigenetics already, you take in your partner. So if you are, for example, making love to somebody that lacks integrity, that lacks honesty, you will be taking that energy and you will be literally carrying it around, because there's a fusion that takes place. And so on the one hand, it's not about demonizing the sexual act or pleasure or bliss, because we are here on Earth to experience love in form. This is one of the densest planets. And so it's it's a planet that allows for that bliss and that pleasure to really be felt in the physical form with a depth and an intensity that you don't get on other planets. But at the same time, it's not about stripping the act of communing with another of its spiritual significance. And so this is where twins come in. Of course, not only twins, but especially twins. Why is that? Because the twin flame journey is an awakening that's specific in terms of the existence of another person. So it's a tandem awakening in another body for whom you feel this unconditional love, the love of soul, of your soul love. And so it implies a communion with another in the physical, even if you are not necessarily coming into physical union in this lifetime, but there is always the potential for that. There is the blueprint for that. And so it adds that layer of sexuality, which is why so many twins, like myself, carry sexual trauma, because we're literally, here to clear this distortion at its root. And we do so within our own bodies and beings, and with our twins, in communion with our twin. And that is why some of us have these periods of reunion. Some of us engage in lovemaking, sexual intercourse with our twin, because we're literally merging and we are restoring sacred sexuality as a spiritual practice, as a way of communing with the divine, as a way of honoring the divine, as a way of restoring orgasm and bliss as one of the highest forms of love on earth, and of the expression and experience of that love in form. Literally a practice of communing with the divine, restoring that sacredness, which is why so many of us that have had that experience with our twin are no longer able to engage in sexual intercourse with other partners. Because our twins are our perfect soul mirror, they literally hold the exact keys for our awakening and for the activation of our DNA, the exact light codes, perfect. That applies to the physical form as well. And so there is a cellular merge that happens during lovemaking and physical interaction. Now, I do want to make it clear that there is a multidimensional merge that happens as well. So that merge happens across dimensions, not just in the physical, but in the physical too. Hence why it's so common for us to feel, for example, that literally our bodies were made for each other, that our bodies love each other, that it's the perfect fit. So that's also why we tend to feel this incredibly powerful sexual attraction to our twins right at the beginning. And it's not that the attraction fades, is that initially a lot of the lower level lust and desire that's also mixed in then with the guilt and the shame gets pushed out into the field. Of course, during that initial meeting, it is the God frequency. It is the pure bliss. But then, of course, all of the rest gets pushed out into the field so that we can clear it. And that's where the individual journey also comes in terms of realizing where our specific wounds come in. And this is more specific for monadic twin flames, of course, as is this entire discourse, especially if you've incarnated with this task, with this assignment of clearing sexual reversal grids of abuse. And this is the type of planetary grid work that many monadic twin flames are called into and that are here on Earth to carry out. So to restore the divinity of the templates that we bring forth here on Earth. And so as you progress on this journey, if you have this type of encounter, you will notice how the lovemaking with your twin becomes more and more and more expansive. There is no end to it. Why? Because your system, your vessel, your literal, your actual nervous system is being upgraded because your light body is being activated, your Merkaba, which is the perfect union of your inner masculine and inner feminine is being activated, and it's allowing for your ascension, which basically just means that you are housing higher and higher and higher frequencies in your body. And so oftentimes that's also why it's necessary to go into periods of separation, because the body needs to calibrate. The body needs to adjust to these higher frequencies. So it needs to take in these codes layer by layer by layer. And every time you come in, more is revealed that is necessary to clear, which is another reason why, especially on monadic journeys, how long you've been on the journey isn't necessarily indicative of how much work you've done or how high your level of consciousness is, because it truly also depends on what you signed up to clear as a pair. And people have signed up to clear all kinds of different distortions, different levels of distortions. And again, not all of us have been on Earth for the same amount of time. For example, my twin and I have been around since pre-Atlantean times, so we also picked up a lot of karmic debris and distortion along the way. Of course, we signed up for it. We signed up to go truly into the trenches and the densest parts of humanity, hence sexual trauma in childhood and all this type of grid ritual abuse that I've mentioned that I don't want to go too deep into because this is YouTube. So it's not always about how long you've been on the journey. Also, it also is not necessarily about how old you are in this lifetime, because again, you might have awakened at an earlier age in this lifetime, but you might have been on Earth for a longer time. That's my case, or the opposite as well. Now, for monadic twins, I just want to end this video by saying that for monadic twins, so many of us had been on very deep awakening and healing journeys even prior to meeting our twin. And so it can be a little bit confusing once we're on the journey to understand and to truly integrate the awareness that this is just another level. This is because we are meant to ascend in this lifetime. This is because we're meant to go home. So even if you've done a lot of healing, a lot of clearing, if you were already spiritually awakening when you met your twin, this will still challenge you very deeply. It will force you into very deep shadow work, because no stone can be left unturned on a monadic twin flame journey, because we have the potential to literally exit the matrix and go back to our planets of origin. Another reason is that sometimes even if we're not stuck in the cycle of reincarnation here on Earth, in the karmic cycle, it can also be because we've signed up to clear not just on a personal and ancestral level, but on a collective level. So planetary scale healing. And that literally happens through our vessel, especially if you're the spiritual twin, especially if you're listening to this. And pardon me, you play the role of the alchemist on this journey. You are oftentimes transmuting through your body, if that's the type of role you're here to play, or if you're here as more of a transmitter. So to transmit higher frequencies, you need to be able to house them. So I hope that this has brought you some more insight into this particular layer of the journey. I am very passionate about this work. Obviously, as I've explained, if you do need any assistance or guidance specifically in this area, do feel free to reach out. My details are below. I work with subconscious reprogramming, shadow work. I do this through nervous system regulation, nervous system recalibration, and I use different techniques, somatic psychotherapy, quantum healing, etc., to help my clients clear these distortions, heal from these deep sexual wounds, and restore their sovereignty, their divinity, and their soul alignment, so as to help the collective in general to ascend, to transition into 5 to 6D Earth as we're living right now. So I'd be very happy to help you if that's okay, if that's your case. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'll also be releasing a womb, heart, throat healing and activation transmission that I channeled just recently. So if you are more advanced on your journey and you want that sort of support, but you don't need one-to-one guidance and healing, then keep an eye out for that. That's really going to be great for all divine feminines out there. And yes, please do like and subscribe if you're enjoying these videos. I will be coming back with more as I also expand as a guide and as a teacher specifically for this journey, and as I also step into more visibility and mission myself. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. I send you all so much love, and I will see you very, very soon.